Bienvenue à l'Institut français du Royaume-Uni. Welcome to the French Institute of the United Kingdom. I'm Jérôme Chevrier. I'm in charge of the book department at the French Institute. We are very delighted today to welcome the jury du prix de l'Entente Littéraire. As you may know, this jury, this prize has been created this year. Following, I'm going to take my notes because I'm not used to the monarchy as a French person, so I don't want to make any mistake. So this prize has been announced by Her Majesty the Queen and Madame Brigitte Macron in September 2023 during the visit of Their Majesty state visit, to France by King Charles III and Queen, and they announced this the creation or the birth of this new prize. This prize is dedicated to YA literature, young adult, jeune adulte, adolescent et jeune adulte, and this prize has been created by the Ministry of Culture in France and the Embassy of the UK in France. And they asked to the Royal Society of Literature and the French Institute to do the job, actually. So we are happy again to have this jury. I won't speak too much because you are not here to listen to me, but I would like to give the mic to Molly Rosenberg, who is the director of the Royal Society of Literature, and she's going to say a few words about this prize.
Thank you, Jérôme. It just took me 5 seconds to get up off a very comfortable couch. Good morning, everyone. As Jérôme says, I'm Molly. I'm from the Royal Society of Literature, and I'm going to very quickly just say a big thank you to our panellists for being here today, and most importantly for doing the job of judging the prizes for the Entente Littéraire prize. The most important and significant thing about the prize, I think, is that the prize is split between the translators and the original creators for each of those. We really want to make sure that the translators are seen as full creatives in their own right, because we all know that the way our cultures can come together is through translation. So thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. I'm going to pass over now, I think, to Joanne Harris, who is the president of the prize jury. My last thing is just to say, on your way out, please take an RSL tote bag and notebook and badge. You've got free things on a Saturday morning. It's so nice. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Joanne.
Hello, everybody. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. I'm curious. Can I just ask you to put your hand up if you're okay with English? Okay. Can you put your hand up if you're okay with French? Can you put both hands up if you're okay with both? That makes me very happy. Good. Because we have a bilingual set of jurors here, and some are more bilingual than others. So it's so nice to be here to celebrate young adult work and also the work of translators. This prize is almost unique in that it values both equally, which is good, because without one we couldn't have the other. I'm going to allow our jurors to introduce themselves because they will do it much better than I will. But I'm Joanne Harris. I've written 25 books. They've all been translated into French, but they are largely translated elsewhere, and so translation is very much part of my life. I love translators, and I have been fighting their corner for a really long time. And we have to do it even more now, because AI is starting to nibble at the edges of their jobs, and we can't let that happen. So can we start with Marie-Aude? Est-ce que vous pouvez vous présenter, s'il vous plaît, et si vous voulez bien traduire, ou bien je le ferai pour vous. D'accord, très bien.
Bonjour, je suis avec ma fille Constance, qui est ma co-autrice et mon interprète en anglais.
Hiya, I am Marie-Aude Murail, and I am joined by my daughter Constance, that's me, who is my co-author and also my interpreter when I travel abroad.
Je suis une écrivaine pour la jeunesse depuis l'âge de 12 ans.
So I've been writing for kids ever since the young age of 12.
C'est impressionnant.
C'était pour ma petite sœur qui avait 8 ans.
That was for my little sister, who was 8 at the time.
J'avais déjà compris que la littérature pour la jeunesse couvre tout un tas de genres. Et donc, il y avait à l'intérieur un roman policier avec des enfants qui mènent l'enquête, chercher du côté peut-être des clubs des 5. Et puis, il y avait un conte animalier pour les plus jeunes.
So already at that age, I had understood that writing for kids meaning spanning a lot of different genres. So in this that I wrote for my little sister, you could find a detective novel quite inspired by the famous Five, where kids were making their own inquiry into the truth. And I also wrote a fairy tale with animals as the main characters.
Yeah. Il y avait même un courrier des lecteurs. Je n'avais que ma petite sœur, mais il y avait une dame imaginaire qui écrivait. Elle n'était pas contente parce qu'il n'y avait pas assez d'illustrations.
And I even did a column for the readers to share their opinions about the magazine. So I invented an imaginary lady complaining about the fact that there were not enough illustrations in the magazine.
Je me suis améliorée et donc, à 14 ans, je me suis installée dans ce pays.
I became better at drawing, and so when I was 14, I decided to settle in this imaginary country.
La Tsvetlani de Tsvetok, la fleur en russe.
I called it Svetlania, and it stems from Tsvetok, the Russian word for flower.
Et j'ai vécu ici toutes sortes d'aventures, bien à l'abri du monde adulte.
And there, I managed to live a lot of adventures far away from and secure from the adult world.
Depuis, j'ai écrit une centaine de livres.
Ever since then, I've been writing 100 of books.
Yeah. Pour les enfants, pour les adolescents, pour les jeunes adultes.
For kids, for teenagers, for young adults.
Et en fait, pour moi, un jeune adulte qui me lit, c'est un enfant qui a grandi avec nos livres.
And so what it means for me to be a young adult is to have been a kid reading my book and who grew up reading them and still reads them today.
J'écrivais pour lui dans ma cuisine, il me lisait aussi dans sa cuisine, et aujourd'hui, dans les salons du livre, dans les festivals, il vient me le dire. Nous avons grandi ensemble.
So I used to be writing my books in my kitchen, and probably that kid was reading my books in his or her kitchen. And now when I go to festivals such as this one, I get to meet them, and they tell me that we actually grew up together.
Merci. Merci Marie-Aude, merci Constance. Thank you. Patrice.
Hi, good morning. I'm Patrice Lawrence, and I obviously have a first name that earns me some curious looks when I'm actually in France. I describe myself as an angry writer, so everything I write is usually fueled by absolute raging fury. From my picture books to my young adult books, I've been a full-time-ish writer, if it's possible to be a full-time children's writer in England, which usually involves lots of school visits, lovely events like this. And I write for all publishers, all ages, because I have no shame.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name's Joseph Coelho. I've been published for about 10 years, but I've been writing for about 20 odd years. So it took a while to get published. I write for all ages, from board books, picture books, middle grade books, non-fiction, and YA. And I started out writing kind of through performance poetry. I started out as a performance poet in my early 20s, doing the London scene, kind of going and doing performance poetry gigs at theatres and cafes, whilst doing lots of other different kinds of jobs. such as working for Camden Council as a transport planner, and during a very dark period, I was a tequila boy. But eventually I managed to get some manuscripts published, and now I'm a full-time author of over 50 books. I spend a lot of time on the road visiting schools and doing festivals and things, and I've always been very passionate about getting young people to write, because I believe if you can get young children writing, a kind of side effect of that is that you get them reading. And I feel like through writing, you can kind of trick them into reading. And I find that works, especially for those reluctant readers and writers, by welcoming young kids into the world of books, by letting them know that books, that literature, that words involve them rather than something that is done to them. I think for so often we tell kids what to read. We treat books as something that's good for them and that they should do, rather than listening to them, allowing them to read what interests them, and so on. So I've kind of involved that through all my work. There's a heart of poetry through everything that I write, but I'm constantly reminding young people that they are writers too, that indeed we, as adults, are writers as well. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm a former Children's Laureate. I was Children's Laureate from 2022 to 2024, where I got to represent children's books in the UK, and did a lot of work during that time, visiting libraries all over the UK. So I've got 217 library cards. So I hope you've all joined your local library. I also, during that time, created a series of videos to encourage young people to write. So if you've got any young people under your charge and you want them to write poems, if you check out the Book Trust website, there are 80 free video resources to get kids writing. And during that time, I was also highlighting up-and-coming writers and illustrators to help diversify bookshelves. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Timothée.
I'm Timothée de Fombelle. I'm a writer. I have many library cards too, but I'm not a children's laureate because it doesn't exist in France. I told Joseph that I'm not sure I would be candidate because it's a big work. It's an ambassador work. So I write books for children, but half of my readers are adults who still books, and I like this, still books to their sons and daughter, and I love this. Last 2 weeks ago, I had 4 generations of readers in front of me in a bookshop. Grandmother, of 94, telling me that she has to send the book to her granddaughter in Marseille, but she said, I'm going to read it before because I was waiting for this third book of the trilogy. And so 4 generations, it was the maximum for me, and so nice. It's something special in these books for children, that it's the only books who are for everybody, I think. And my first book, I think I came in this place, in this comment on l'appelle, la salle classée, for my first book, Toby Lawrence, in 18 years ago, I think. It was my first book, but before I write plays, many plays, because plays are never finished. So I don't have to say my play is perfect, so now it can go to the bookshop. No, it's never finished, because actors, directors, they will complete, they will do the job, and so I'm not alone. But my first book, Toby Lawrence, is about humanity of 1.5 millimeters in a tree, and I couldn't do it on a stage. Now it's on some stage. I saw a version in Prague, in Republic Czech, beautiful, but I thought it was impossible. And my last book is Alma, is a trilogy around Atlantic Ocean in the 18th century. Yes, a big story. The last part was this was out during the summer, and so now I can travel. Come, it's finished. My career is finished, and I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to read, and to not to read only to give materials for the story I write, but give for pleasure. Read the books. Yes, I think I don't know how many books we read for this prize.
Thank you, merci. It has been a real trip judging this prize. For a start, I've got to hang out with some of my colleagues and to learn more about their work, but also it's been a long time, really, since I read any books for young people, because my son is now 31 and I've kind of lost the habit. I've judged other prizes before, but never a young adult prize, and it has been such fun exploring the diversity of fiction that's available. Because to the casual observer, if we are to believe British bookshops and their displays, and schools and their recommendations, all the books for young adults have been written by a handful of aging British comedians, and there isn't anything else. So it was quite nice to realise that actually there is, and there is a huge affection for different kinds of themes. We've had books about the environment, books about shoplifting, books about relationships, about love, lots of books about potential dystopian futures. We've had graphic novels, we've had more traditional novels, and we have also had a very broad range of reach, because it turns out, and we didn't know this when we started to judge the prize, that the French concept of young adult fiction starts at a different age as the English concept of it. And so we've been reading books designed for teenagers of all ages right into young adulthood in the 20s. So how has it been judging this prize? What have been the high points of judging this prize for the rest of you? Do you want to start, Patrice? Yeah.
I was so jealous of the French writers. It felt that there was a freedom to explore different subjects in different ways. It felt ranged from like the surreal to the unexpected. The books were funny, they were truthful, and they didn't feel as censored as I've written, I can't remember, 6 YA books for teenagers in the UK, and you have to be very careful about what you write. And the books that we read, I think I've probably never laughed so much in a judging panel as I did in our panel. And it really, in some ways, reinvigorated my practice as a writer, because I just thought you could write all of these different subjects in all of these different ways. So I must say it's actually one of my favourite prizes ever, I think, to judge.
It has been a lot of fun, and yes, very funny. And you're right, it's been interesting to see what you can get away with as a writer in France without being told, this isn't suitable for young people, because it turns out it is suitable for young people. It's just not suitable for the adults who are watching what the young people are reading, and there might just be a problem there. We might talk about that later. Timothée, what's your thought on this?
It was really interesting to travel in, I think, 2 or 3 years of writing for young adults in a country like UK, and so it was really interesting to have this panel and to see the difference too. And but we think too that when I read this book, I said, so we have the right to write this too. So it's yes, it's always interesting to open. For example, I'm really, you can hear my English, so I'm really a French reader in French. I'm my books are translated in many languages, but I'm very frightened by translation and passionate by translation. the most important thing for me in this prize is judging translation too, and it's so important, and I like, for example, in here my translator is Sarah Ardizone, and I really it's really someone who opened the door of her language to my stories. So yes, I read stories and I read translations.
Joe, did you feel that there was something very different about these books to the ones that we're used to reading in English?
Yeah, absolutely. I think YA has always been an interesting genre. It's quite young. And certainly when I was growing up, it didn't exist.
No, it didn't. It's only 20 years old.
Yeah, and it feels like in the UK, YA books have YA protagonists. And I feel like that readership-wise, they tend to be young people in their 20s. I don't often see many teenagers reading or going to those events for YA that are kind of marketed to them, if that makes any sense.
No, I think it does.
So it was really interesting seeing the difference between the UK and France. As Patrice was saying, I was really quite jealous as well, because it feels like there was such a broad spectrum of different kinds of books that never once patronized the young reader, never once sort of told them, oh, this is for you because it's got a YA protagonist, or it's about things that we think YA's young adults read. It covered such a spectrum with, we had YA protagonists, but there were also books with animal protagonists, there were books with adult protagonists, and a kind of dipping in and out of the teen world. And that felt really enriching. But I just find YA so fascinating as a genre, because I think it's, even though it's, as you say, about 20 years old, it's sort of finding its legs, and it's really interesting to see how that's developing in different nations.
Marie-Aude, qu'est-ce que vous pensez? Qu'est-ce que vous avez vécu comme juge?
Oui, je vais peut-être rebondir sur ce que vous disiez là, sur les différences entre anglais et français. Parce que notre liberté a un revers, c'est que nos livres ne sont pas traduits.
So I would just want to circle back on what you just said and say that our freedom has also its pitfall, is that the way that we are not translated into the English language sometimes.
Je suis plus traduite en chinois.
I am more translated into Chinese than I am into English.
Sorry. Je pense que c'est l'édition anglaise qui met un barrage à notre liberté.
Sometimes I think that it's the British publishing industry that puts up walls to protect themselves from this freedom.
Je pense que c'est un comportement protectionniste plus que moral.
And I think it's a stance that stems more from protectionism than from morality.
Mon éditrice, qui revenait du Salon du Livre de Francfort, m'a dit que les éditeurs n'en pouvaient plus de voir la même chose avec les mêmes couvertures.
My editor came back from the Frankfurt Book Fair this year telling me that other editors from all around Europe were actually kind of fed up that they had to publish the same book over and over again with the same storytelling and the same book covers.
Et donc, mon éditrice française se tourne de plus en plus vers d'autres langues, vers les pays nordiques et vers les pays d'Amérique latine, notamment.
And so what she does as a publisher and as an editor is that she turns herself towards other countries, such as the Nordic countries, but also South America.
Il y a actuellement un léger recul des traductions anglaises dans les maisons d'édition jeunesse françaises.
And so we've seen that in the past couple of years, translations from English into French have slowed down a little bit in the French publishing industry.
Et je suis allée l'autre jour chez une autre maison PKJ, Pocket Jeunesse, grande maison. Autrefois, je voyais sur les rayons que des noms anglais ou américains. Et cette fois-ci, c'était que des noms français. On est en train de relocaliser la production.
And so back in the day when I was visiting my editors back at Pocket Jeunesse, which is a big publishing company in France, I used to arrive in their office and all of the books were American or British names. And last time I came, it was all French books by French authors. So there's an attempt to relocalize the industry in France right now.
Mais nous sommes également très menacés en France par la censure économique, parce que actuellement, les maisons d'édition sont rachetées par des milliardaires. Tu es en colère, je suis en colère.
But there's also big threats to our publishing industry right now, which is economic censorship, since most publishing houses right now are being bought off by a handful of millionaires and multimillionaires.
Yeah.
And so she feels angry just as you are.
Oui, parce que ce sont des milliardaires réactionnaires, pas très très loin de l'extrême droite.
Because these very rich people are reactionary, very conservative in ideology-wise, and very close from far-right movements in France.
Ils achètent les journaux, ils achètent les médias, ils achètent les maisons d'édition.
So they buy off newspapers, TV programs, and now publishing houses.
Et je fais souvent ce geste, ils ont les mains sur le robinet.
Oh.
Ils peuvent laisser passer ou fermer.
Mm-hmm. And so what they have is that their hands is on the tap, and so they decide whether to open or close.
Ça s'appelle la diffusion.
And that's diffusion, like distribution-wise. They also buy off like La Fnac or Relais, like big distributors as well.
Okay. She knows well. Et ce qui fait très peur, c'est une dernière nouvelle que j'ai eue avant de venir vous voir, c'est que ces milliardaires, on va en citer Bolloré, Kretinsky, Dassault, ces milliardaires viennent d'investir, de mettre de l'argent dans une école très ancienne de journalisme. Ils sont en train de former des journalistes pour les mettre dans leurs médias.
And so to finish off this topic, the very last piece of news that I got before I came to London was that a handful of those rich people, which we're going to name them, Daniel Kretinsky, Vincent Bolloré, the Dassault family, they are all just recently partnered up with Bayard, which is a publishing house, to buy off the oldest journalism school in Paris. So they're going to train journalists to put them in their own media. So it's a whole system in place.
Merci.
Frightening, no?
It's very interesting that you should say this, because I don't think that France is the only country where authors feel that this is happening, which in a sense makes YA fiction even more important, because from what I remember from teaching boys aged between 10 and 18, one of the motivating factors of being a teenager is wanting to find something to rebel against and wanting to know how best to do it. And to me, fiction is one of the ways that we explore what we want to be, what we really care about, the things that we want to invest our energy in, which is why I think there's so much dynamism in YA fiction, which is why there is so much anxiety about global warming, the environment, neurodiversity, race, all these other things, these conversations which adults should be having and young people are having and are continuing to have through fiction. So I mean, people chip in now because it's time we went into a proper conversation, but what's the role and the importance of YA, and why is the rest of mainstream fiction so resistant to acknowledging its importance? Anyone here?
I think it all gets muddled up with business and money. Yeah, we see time and time again in publishing that, often a lot of the decisions now being made by sales and marketing, and you can have an editor really passionate about a manuscript, but that needs to translate to the sales and marketing team. So I think we've got that going on, whilst at the same time having a huge number of editors and of writers and people in the industry that are really passionate and want to get new stuff coming out. So I think there's this, and there's probably always been this kind of battle, and why it's so important that we get young people reading and that we get those books into their hands. I find it really interesting now that self-publishing is becoming an increasing route for new authors to get through the door, and I'm increasingly meeting writers and illustrators who were self-published and then managed to find a traditional publishing route because they've kind of proven their sort of sales credentials by going out there and selling their books. Although I would there's a caveat to that. I don't think that means, oh, go out and self-publish all your books. It's easy. It's not easy. You have to become a publishing house. You have to get an editor, hire an editor and a book designer, and it's a full-time job. But I think those that do that and do it properly are able to find another way through. And I think that's really interesting because it becomes another route that maybe books that might be struggling to get past these various layers can break through.
Yes, I think that's right. I think self-publishing is the grassroots rebellion that we're seeing here in publishing. There is a kind of mainstream which is deemed to be acceptable and sometimes which is kind of bland. And then there's the rest of it. Do chip in, allez-y, parce que, bon, vous levez le doigt et puis vous y allez parce que je ne vais pas poser des questions éternellement, quand même.
So, I just say there's, I think for me there's two things. There's the book, in a sense, as a product of what a book is, and I think all children's books, from board books, picture books, through to young adults, can start conversations, and that's what I often use them for. But I think separate to that, there's the role of the author, and I think what I can do as an author, I can go into schools as a very non-traditional author, as, you know, the first person in my family to be born in the UK, as a black woman when there is still so much misogyny and so much anti-blackness and racism, as a child who spent the first 4 years in private foster care, somebody with a family that is affected by imprisonment. All of those things are in my YA books, and those are all things that I talk about in schools because there are so many young people who share those experiences, and for them it's incredibly powerful that not only that I can take those experiences and fictionalize them, which is safer, but actually I can say those are my experiences, and quite often it makes them feel validated and important in a way that the curriculum in British schools certainly don't.
Allez-y.
Hier, j'étais avec des CO2, donc des enfants de 8-9 ans, au lycée Charles de Gaulle. Et je pense que tout propos que je tiens dans une classe est un propos révolutionnaire et politique.
So yesterday I was just around the corner at Lycée Français Charles de Gaulle, and I was with CE2 children, so age 8 to 9. And what I think is that every single word that is uttered in a classroom with those kids is both revolutionary and political.
Et je leur ai demandé, savez-vous ce qu'on possède de plus important au monde?
And so I asked them, what do you think is the most important thing that you own?
Je l'ai écrit au tableau. Le temps.
It is, and I wrote it on the blackboard. I said, it is your time.
Ce temps qu'on vous vole.
This time that is stolen away from you.
Et c'est pour ça que j'ai dit, il faut que les parents aient des vacances, il faut que les parents partent de bonne heure à la retraite, il faut qu'ils aient du temps libre pour penser, pour être heureux, pour rire, pour jouer. Ils ont besoin de ce temps. Défendez votre temps.
And so I said, well, that's why your parents have to go on holidays, and they have to actually have access to retirement, and they have to have access to free time to think, to play, to have fun, to read. And so that one thing that you have to defend, absolutely defend, is your own time.
Et le lieu où je peux tenir ces propos révolutionnaires, ça s'appelle l'école. Et c'est le dernier lieu pour moi de la liberté. Parce que c'est là qu'on vous fait grandir. Et c'est là qu'on nous protège, nous, les écrivains.
And so the very place where I can entertain these ideas and say these revolutionary things that are actually quite simple but revolutionary is the school. And the school is that place of freedom where we teach you how to grow up, and is also the place where you protect artists.
Bien, j'adore, merci.
Bravo. I agree about time, which is reading is une réserve naturelle de temps. Something like that. Reading needs time, and all the society is fighting to take your time, and for children it's really something so important. They have to have too much time. They have to have nothing to do, and we are yes. So and our job as writer for young adult and reader of young adult literature is to create this. I think it's the third occasion to meet literature. It's the first one is with picture book. You talk about, yes, picture book around 7 or 10, and then first reading, first novels, and then the third occasion because we are we're making readers. We are the one who makes the readers. That's so and citizens too, and human being, and so it's our job. So that's why I was reading with so much interest, because I always ask the question: is it something? Is this book a good ambassador of what is a book? The more beautiful compliment I had on my books was when publishing house in a woman in Mexico who told me that when she heard about my first book in Bologna fair, book fair, so a big book fair, the only words she heard about the book, she said, there was something in the street of the fair saying, stand H3, there is a book. And it was mine. So there is a book. And it's the best compliment. If I write I'm so happy because it's the sense of my life. And every time when I write a book, when I write a project, I ask myself the question: is there a book? Is there a book? Because it can be pages, stories, but is there really a book, a necessary book? Because my sentence in my head always is primum non nocere. D'abord, ne pas nuire. First, not
do no harm.
Do no harm, like medicals, and because I don't want to give a bad vision of what is literature.
Thank you. C'est bien. When I was little, I read a lot. My grandfather had a lot of books in his house, and he told me, you have only one life, but if you read books, you can have as many as you want. And it took me a while to work out what he meant, because I was only little. And he said, well, it's like when you eat an apple and there are seeds in the apple and the apple seeds grow into something else. Because at that time I actually believed that I had apple trees growing in my stomach because he was that kind of guy and he told those kind of stories. He said, the seeds expand and they become something and you carry that around with you and they are things that you wouldn't have experienced. So if you read a book about somebody very different to you, you can have a piece of their world. You can have a glimpse of their experience, and your life expands accordingly. And I thought this was an interesting image that I grew into later. And I think that this is one of the things that we've realized when we've been reading these books, that they come from all different paths and all different life experiences, and it is important to diversify them rather than to homogenize them for the sake of sales and marketing. Because actually, when you feed your kids, you don't want to feed them something that doesn't nourish them. You want to feed them something that will make them grow, will make them strong, will make their brains alert. You don't just want to feed them something that's just bah. So sometimes I have arguments with my publishers about this, and they feel that children's and YA literature should not be spicy, should be bland food. I think we should be making it as varied as possible. And I think, we have the chance to do this through translated fiction, not just fiction in French, but through fiction from elsewhere too. We should be encouraging this. It's one of the things I go on a lot about, I'm afraid. It strikes me that we are starting to get a little short of time, and it could be that some of you might want to ask questions to the panel. So if you do, please do put your hands up. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking questions myself. But I want to give you the chance to ask anything about any aspect of children's or YA literature to the panel. Yes, please. Lady there in the scarf.
I'm Jane from Walk Books, and I know that, as Timothée said, you've got a very good relationship with his translator, and I wondered if you wanted to talk about that, but whether the rest of you could say how you work with your translators and whether that's a close relationship or whether it's just something that you hand over and then wonder how it is.
Oh, no, that's a really good question. I think with translators, we all have the problem that a lot of foreign publishers don't want the author to be in touch with the translator. They actively discourage it. So from my perspective, I actually have to reach out to the translator, and I have this pro forma letter that I send them going, I'm so glad you're translating my book. Here I am. Here are all my contact details. If you have any questions at all, come to me. And I would advise any other author to do the same if they want to have a contact with their translator, because, I've had some fairly bad experiences where I have had no contact with the translator and they have given away the main plot twist of the book in the title just because they didn't have the chance to get a conversation with me. This is to be avoided if possible. So what are your experiences with your translators? Do you work closely with them? Are you allowed to work closely with them?
Yeah.
Yes, Marie-Aude.
Oui, oui, j'ai un contact très étroit avec les traductrices et les traducteurs italiens, allemands, hongrois. Elle est si fine, ma traductrice hongroise, que des fois je me dis que je devrais lui donner le livre d'abord en correction, parce qu'elle trouve des choses que les correcteurs français n'ont pas vues.
So yeah, I have a very close relationship with a few of my translators, the Italian translators, the German translators, and especially my Hungarian translator, whom we've seen recently in Hungary. And she's so great at translating me that she's also my best proofreader. She corrects things and she finds details that the French proofreaders haven't found. So she's also a little bit of an editor. And so I've been thinking that maybe I should just give my book to her first, and then we translate back from Hungarian.
Et elle est parfois au-dessus de moi, comme une espèce de chose qui me surveille, comme ça. Et je me dis, oh, ma traductrice hongroise penserait que... Et je modifie pour elle.
And so now when I work, she's like a presence above me, just looking down on me and surveilling, so trying to looking at what I do, and I think of her, and I'm like, what would my Hungarian translator think? And I change things accordingly.
That's great. Any other comments on translators?
I've had little to no contact with any of my translators. I've always only met them sort of socially or by chance, normally kind of at the Bologna Book Fair or via kind of thank God for Instagram, yeah, because often that will be what I'll find out. Often it's where I find out that a book's been translated. You'd be like, oh, it's in that language. Oh, okay. Because we don't always get copies. You don't always find out until after the fact. Which I think is a real shame, and very similar to the situation between writers and illustrators, which we were talking about earlier, that you're often kept apart, which I sort of understand, because writers can be very precious and have their vision, and you need space for an illustrator to put their mark, and likewise you need space for a translator to interpret, because translation is an act of interpretation and an act of magic and conjuring. So I think that's really important, but it also feels like a shame, because I feel like there's so many opportunities there for greater connection globally, and I certainly found that when I was laureate. I was lucky enough to go to Bologna as laureate, and to the States, and to France, and to Italy and Germany, and there weren't as many connections as I think there could be, and I think there's a hunger on all sides for more connection between nations, especially where publishing is concerned, because we're all experiencing this time of a lot of pressure on the amount of free time we have, as Timothée was saying. There's kids especially are being hounded from all sides with social media and computer games, as not to just blanket say these are bad things. We've got Book Talk via TikTok now, which seems to be running things, and they're now becoming a publisher. So that, which is going to be a sort of interesting change to things. So I think there's a lot of good that can come out of this. I think there's a lot of publishers and people in the industry doing a lot of good work. But I think we also need to ensure that we buy the work as well and support the work, because then that gives more agency to the authors and to those doing that essential work, and hopefully gives us more time and more power to connect with translators and with illustrators, and hopefully show that can be a really positive thing.
Great. Anything to add to that?
Yeah. So I've recently sent a couple of books, Swedish version of a book I'd written. I had no idea I had a Swedish deal whatsoever. And one of my young adult books had quite a few foreign deals, including in Indonesia. Curiosity was killing me. I mean, genuinely, because my young adult books are very London-based, very London-set, a very particular register and colloquialism. And I genuinely love to know how that translates. And I'd sort of love to have that conversation. But I suppose the other thing for me is, because all my sort of young adult books have characters of colour, so black, mixed heritage, and I know the language around race is very different in lots of different countries. So I'm interested to know how some of those topics are picked up in translation and the words that are used to describe my characters. So I'd absolutely love to. I'd never thought of the possibility of meeting translators. I do with illustrators. I sort of contact them. I'd love to do that, not to tell them how they should do their job, because I'm just actually really curious and I absolutely admire them. So if I ever get a foreign deal again, I shall be on Instagram searching them and having that conversation, because I think it's an amazing thing to do.
Great.
Yes, for me, the link with translators in a few languages, because in China, I never met the translator, but I think in Germany, Tobias Scheffel, in England, of course, Sarah Ardisone, in Italian, Maria Bastanzetti. It's really, they are here for each book. Sarah, I think there are 3 people who knows me naked. And she's one, because she read everything. My mother, my wife, the other, and Sarah, because she translated thousands of pages, and she knows all my tips, all my problems, she knows when I'm not honest, so it's a confident relationship, and for me it's only this, because I think I never give her a solution. I never correct something of what she did. I always agree to everything because I have to be confident. Yesterday I met children and I told them that for me translating is like taking a tree from a garden to another one. So it's a little dangerous for the story because my language is really my garden. Sometimes a few of my friends, writers, told me that when they have the story, they could give it to another one to write it, not me. That's the best part of my job is writing, one word after one word. And I love this, and constructing story, I like it too, but so yes, there is really something. And the chance I had is that in a few languages, the publisher too speaks and read Jane, read French. And it was the case in Italy at the beginning. It was the case in Amsterdam. What is the name in English? The Dutch. And in many languages. But now it's not always the time. The same. So yes, when publisher can be my eye on the translation, it's and they discovered the book in French, not through scouts or so. It's yes, it's a big surprise of this publishing story for me. I didn't imagine one day that my stories could travel.
That's great, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, lady there.
I wonder if you could say a bit about the process of how you got to your shortlist. Did you have loads and loads of books submitted, or how did it come about? This is very interesting.
It was a very interesting process because it's the first time we've had this prize and we weren't quite sure how it was going to pan out. So we have an English-speaking jury and a French-speaking jury, and then there's me in the middle, and I do both. And so initially I read the long list, which was all the books that were submitted, and I then cut it to a manageable list of 10 books for each half. So we had 10 books in French and 10 books in English, and then we had meetings of the French panel and the English panel, and I chaired them all. And we then got down to a shortlist of 3 from 10. So now we've got 3 French books and 3 English books, so we have a shortlist of 6, and soon we will be able to announce the winners. There will be a winner originally written in English, one originally written in French, and we'll be announcing those on December the 4th, in fact, in the presence of Madame Macron and the Queen. And we'll have a nice little party to celebrate that. And there will be a prize both for the authors and for the translators, who did just as much work as the authors did on this one. But that's kind of how we worked it. But we're still kind of knocking off the edges because it's the first time we've done this. But it worked very well, didn't it? It was a very nice, cordial meeting. We had to do it on Zoom because everybody lives in different parts of the world. But it was good. Anything to add to any of that? Shall we go for another question?
Ce qui m'a surprise, c'est la rapidité avec laquelle on a été d'accord.
Yeah, it's true. We did come to a decision relatively quickly because, you know, it was about an hour, but we had long conversations about the books, and there was so much to love in those books, and they were so very different. But there were some that we felt were particularly rich and original, and well constructed and well translated. So yeah, there was that.
I could just sort of add, I think for me the pleasure was I've judged quite a few YA prizes and middle grade prizes and different prizes, and actually what was so lovely was just having not the same old books submitted, reading something that was completely different from what I normally read. though I must say my eyebrows are still up here somewhere. Someone was like, they went, what? But it was just the absolute joy of reading books that I would not normally have read. But also what it did make me, I think going back to what you were saying, was that I just felt very ashamed by how little translated fiction there is in YA and children's, and that the majority of books that you'll see are, if not British, they're US, aren't they? There's so little, and I just think it adds to the sense of Britain being quite a parochial, insular country, and I think that translated fiction could open us up in so many other ways, and that just brought it home to me how little there is, which is such a shame.
I have a few figures to share with you on that
really
topic, if I can just chime in for real quick. So in France, about 15 to 16% of all titles that are published are translated texts in fiction, whereas in the United Kingdom, I'm sorry to say that it is 5.6% of all books published in fiction. Not to mention non-fiction. I don't have the figures on that. But the French is the first language that is translated here, so thank you for that. And English is the first translated language as well in France. It's about 60% of all translated titles. So there's still a very strong connection between French and English markets, even though there's a discrepancy in how many books are translated every year.
Thank you. That's really interesting, actually. I mean, and also I think the interesting thing from our perspective, although we don't have an awful lot of translated fiction, it is growing, but most of it is in the YA and children's literature area, which is, I think, really curious because clearly there is an appetite for something new, something slightly different. I think we might be running out of time here, so thank you so much for your attention, everybody. Thank you to our lovely jurors for this.